All right, welcome everyone to episode 6 of Sales Hacks. I'm Ryan Maggio, North America VP of Sales here at Xactly. I'm joined by our founder, CEO, Chris Cabrera. Chris, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me back. I
Yeah.
love doing these.
Well, today we have an interesting topic where we're talking about ChatGPT, generative AI, how it's really going to play into the vision of how we work, focusing mainly on the sales element of things, right? So, talking about how technology will influence either how sellers interact with their customers, prospect, close deals. To the audience that's out there, obviously, as always, feel free to ask questions. We're monitoring those. Let's definitely keep this interactive because this is a new topic, right? This is something that we haven't really seen before. And if you go back in time to when Xactly first started in 2005, we started as a SaaS vendor, right? So you had, I don't know, the wherewithal, I guess you would call it, of saying, hey, let's be able to collect all this data and take this data to use it for our internal benchmarking for our customers. I think what we've seen now is an evolution to that, and want to get your thoughts on back then, what were you thinking? And then where you're seeing AI go tomorrow, right? Or today, and how does that impact, the overall vision for when you first started the company?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such an exciting time because I think this AI is really overhyped right now. I think that the Chat GPT and all these things are getting a lot of play, and I think people are scrambling to figure out how to what it means. And so I think it's overhyped, and that's why I think a lot of people are kind of maybe getting a little let down when they get into it. But I think in the long term, it's underhyped. It's not. People don't realize how big a sea change this is going to be. We're going to look back and be like, this was the time when things really changed.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm excited about is, like you said, we started the company in 2005, as you know, and a couple years in, we kind of just thought, oh, we're getting all this data, and people are putting millions and millions of transactions through, paying billions and billions. We have a single customer that pays over $2 billion, in commission. And I remember thinking, gosh, that's a lot of data. It'd be great if we could compare companies to each other, aggregated and anonymized. I don't want the names of the company. And so, kind of like back in those days, we were either just brilliant or really lucky. And I think obviously it was the latter, because we didn't really know what this data was going to all mean, but we put it in our contracts that we had the right to use our customers' data in an aggregated and anonymized way. Customer had the right to opt out. I remember thinking if we could get 20%, 30% of the customers to opt in, that would be an incredible amount of data. I think it's something like 97% today opt into this program. But the challenge has always been having all this data is great. And, we go through great pains to try to make it meaningful for customers. But what I think that all these large language models, like ChatGPT can do for us in the future is make it easy to ask questions of the data. That's been the hardest thing, is getting all this data to actually become information where you can act on it. So that's why I'm so excited.
Well, no, I mean, it's a great point. I think that's the thing, right? It's you have this data set, and it's like, okay, well, now what, right? And it's not even so much for the history of what we collected was on the end result of the comp data for administrators. Now, if we take that back with, what can that do for salespeople? That's where it becomes interesting to get prescriptive. Hey, what are the best in breed? If we were to create a tiger team or a tiger type of seller, so this is what the best sellers do. Now go tell me where I have, areas to go improve my sales team. And I think those are the things that, like, as a sales leader, that excites me.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And I think more people will be able to consume the data than ever before. So, for example, again, we've had this data now, I don't know, 16 years, and many, many, many of our customers use it, but it's pretty specific to the comp admins. And it's, a lot of it is, let's create this dashboard so that I can look at these pieces of data on a regular basis. And that to me is very 2008, right?
Yeah.
The future is, I want to come in, have my coffee and ask the system like, hey, just like you can do with Siri, but have it have access to all this data and be able to feed it back to me in a way that I can communicate with it in ways I could never do before. And that's what's going to let sales reps use it, demo people use it, SDRs use it. That's going to be the game changer, I think, as it relates to the sales people.
Well, and I think it's a good segue into kind of the next pieces. And I know you have a book coming about this called The Unicorn Fallacy, where everything was growth at all costs, right? No matter what, you just throw heads at it. Go throw more marketing dollars. Go throw more, lead gen people. How do you think AI really plays a role into this growth at all costs? Because it's kind of almost seems a little bit counterintuitive, where you don't have to go do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I appreciate you giving me the book plug. My first book was Game the Plan. This is kind of the follow up to that. The first book was very tactical about designing comp plans that created win-win scenarios. This book was really to kind of take advantage of the changes that were happening in the marketplace. And when we started writing this book, it was well over a year ago, and it was long before ChatGPT and these things even came out. And it was before the market sort of did this shift away from growth at all costs. But we were already espousing that because we just, I always felt bad. Went to undergrad school through an entrepreneur program, got my master's in business, and always felt bad that I was running companies that never made any money. It was like, did I go to school to learn how to lose money? Like, this is just a weird dynamic. And so I kind of liked when the market sort of was beginning to shift and say, hey, we want more balanced companies. And so the whole book was really about, I also got frustrated because, there's all these entrepreneurs running around, pounding their chest because they're unicorns. And I always thought unicorns were supposed to be rare, right? And now this idea that there are herds of unicorn running around Silicon Valley, is kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah.
It really it's become lame. And so people have bought into this whole fallacy, and some of those unicorns, got $2 billion, $2.5 billion valuations or more, and they're like $50 million companies, right?
Yeah,
and
today, they can't raise around now.
Today they're having a tough time, and so the book is really this segue to build quality businesses, regardless of what the markets are doing, and those businesses will always be worth money. But to answer your question specifically, we've actually added an 11th chapter because of all this ChatGPT stuff and these large language models, because it does play perfectly into building more quality companies, right? Because the things about building these quality companies when you're going for EBITDA and not just growth at all costs, when you're going just plowing money into companies to grow at all costs, it hides all the warts because it's all just about the growth and then nothing else matters. When you're fine tuning these companies because you want a balance between growth and profitability, every little thing matters, right? Every little, like we talk about the F1, I'm a big F1 fan. These guys are changing the wing on the back of the car to get tenths of seconds improvement, right? That's where businesses are going. How do I get these fine-tuned? And I think it's the AI models, this ability to ask questions of this vast data set and have it be very easy to ask questions and get intuitive responses. That's what's going to be the game changer.
And there'll be a link dropped in the chat as well for a link to your book. Highly recommend it. The first one was a great read. I'm sure that this one will be great as well. I know you do the F1 analysis or analogy. I'm more of a NASCAR guy. You know that. Go watch. Everything is about.
I just don't like the whole circle thing.
Well, you wouldn't have liked the race this past weekend because that's literally all. Kyle Larson won. But the reason why he won, so it's actually an interesting piece because he started in the back, moved up, had a lane pit violation, had to go all the way to the back, but was able to win the race and led for like something like 75% of the race because his team used data and the analysis of what was happening on the track to cut a corner a certain way that nobody else was. And he gained like 2 seconds every lap to eventually caught up. I think that's where you're starting to see this with this data set and how sales teams are going and interacting. How can I take that? We're not saying, hey, let's go from 0 to 100. How do I get an improvement in my sales team out of 2%, right? If I can go get 2% more from every single rep on a day-to-day basis or 5% more, that incrementally adds up to where you're able to go do that. And that's what the AI, I think, is really, it's telling me, or what I'm excited about is how I can change my sales team. Like you look at an MIT and Stanford survey or study that was done, they found customer service workers at software firms who had access to generative AI tools were 14% more productive. Like 14% more time in their day was spent doing more productive work. And it gets you thinking about, and I want to get your thoughts. What can salespeople be doing, right? If they had that much more, 14% more productivity in a day, that translates back down. We're big on EBITDA. Like, how do we track towards that? Not growth at all costs, but that has material impact across a sales team of 200 people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by that 14%, because I think anywhere where companies start to use this technology to make their reps smarter, more productive, do more with less. I mean, just think of the ability, because again, the data is all there and it's been there. The problem is getting it to be actionable, right? And so, like, you look at reps when they're creating their territories, or they're saying, who am I going to call today, or who am I going to target? It's a painful process, and it's like pulling teeth, and the data is difficult to get. It's really unreliable. Imagine if they could just literally say, hey, large language model, ChatGPT, whatever, the Bard one, the Poe one. There's many different ones. Yeah. It's not just the ChatGPT, but look at my territory and pull out all the accounts that have the same profile as ones we've closed in the past, and write me an introduction letter. Well, first, go look at what's happening publicly in the public information about those companies, and then write me an intro letter to each of them that I can send. I mean, again, today, if you might try to do that, you might not love the wording of it. You might need to tweak it a little bit, but I'm telling you, it's getting better and better and better. I'll share a little personal anecdote. I've been married 33 years, and one of the reasons
she's a saint, by the way.
She's amazing. One of the reasons I've lasted that long is I send flowers on all the special occasions. And I try my best to write these little corny poems. And it's hard, especially after 33 years, you kind of start repeating them. So thankfully, I have no fear at all that my wife is watching this, because she's not and doesn't have a LinkedIn. But the last couple, I've been going to ChatGPT and I've been saying, write me a poem about my wife, Marla, for 33 years, who loves puppies, and I swear to God, they're amazing. And so I've been putting those on the things. And of course, she has no idea, but she's getting these poems. She's like, God, you are amazing with these poems.
And you took full credit,
rhymes
right?
Of course. Well, she doesn't even know what ChatGPT is. It's not worth trying to explain it. But my point is, like, think of how much more productive that made me, right? I didn't have to sit there and go through trying to create rhymes, and I would have spent a half an hour of my day just trying to do that. And this thing in 12 seconds gave me something I could use. Just apply that to all the things that salespeople are doing, whether they're lead gen people or marketing people or sales reps themselves. There's so many instances where you could improve. People talk about, ChatGPT is going to replace all these jobs. I don't think it is. Maybe in the long run, some certain jobs. But I think selling is always going to be a unique thing. I think what it's going to do is take some of the mundane minutia, the stuff that makes it hard, make those reps 10 times more productive, so they can spend their time on the human element, which is really where I don't think any computer will ever replace.
And that's the thing, right? You talk about when you talk about targeting accounts, everybody has a subjectivity to what accounts is the best account for me to target, right? You always want to go after the lowest hanging fruit, the top titles, but you can go in and hopefully with ChatGPT, it's one of those things where as a seller, in the future state, my sellers can say, hey, here's my list of accounts. I want to go target people that have been at their company for more than 2 years, and it's director or higher title. They're publicly traded. They said this on their recent earnings call, or they have this, earnings, whatever it may be, and say, okay, here's a list of the 20, 30, 40, 50 contacts.
What you're hitting on is what is so cool. None of that data, all of that data is out there for those reps to find, but it takes forever. They have to be research assistants.
Right.
That's the part that sucks. Whereas the new world is, imagine if you could just ask this model, to go do that for you in seconds.
Yeah.
That's the game changer.
Well, and it's like it's almost the analogy of when you had dial-up internet, and you could sit there waiting for a web page load for 2-3 minutes, and you would see it build, pixel by pixel, to when first, DSL came out. Now we have, um, fiber optic and all these speeds where if a page doesn't load in the first 5 seconds, I'm not going to that website again, right? It's the same mentality, and this is where it gets once again exciting for what Chat GPT can do for sellers, because it engages them. The thing that every single rep, and my reps that are sitting out there now, hopefully they don't hear this, but I know that they all hate prospecting. They all hate going and doing that research, reaching out, but that's part of the job. It's not the fun part. And we got
That's why they hate it, because it's not the fun part.
Right.
The fun part is actually talking to people that are the right people that, might have an interest in what you have to sell or talk about. That's what reps, and if we could make it so that that's all reps did, was spend their time talking to the right people, get rid of all the minutia that it takes to get, think of all the work that they do in the current model just to make one call,
Yeah.
and get to the right person. It takes forever. That's why they hate it. And that's why they don't do it.
And it'll be interesting to see how the evolution of that, like looking at it from an outbound prospecting perspective, and then once the buyer comes in, how do they interact with Chat GPT on finding the right companies to go target, right? So I'm sure there will be some marketing play to make sure, hey, we got to make sure we pop up if people search for in Chat GPT for that. But that kind of goes into my next question. We talk about opportunities for non-technical people to do more. What do you think about like that? It's because it's different elements, right? It's coders, it's marketers, it's HR.
Again, I just think that any job that any of us have could. I just gave the example of writing a poem on a flower delivery. There's almost nothing that we do in our lives where there isn't some level of minutia that I think these types of systems will be able to eliminate and make us more productive. Not replace us, not replace the job that we do, but make it so that the mundane parts of the job are more rote and just get done. And the more exciting parts of the job is what people spend their time on.
Well, if you look back to our incentive customers, right? I think that's one of the areas for our customers and people in the audience that use our incentives tool. It's looking at it from a services standpoint. It's not going to be the coding, right? It's going to be more of how do you've been always big on this of leverage the data. Don't you buy a tool to be able to go in and do the day-to-day task, put the analyst back in your role.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that for like services to sales team, or like our customers that are leveraging Incent today, Xactly Incent, our flagship product, about where you think ChatGPT will be within there, or if we can announce. I know Arnab's not here to do future product discovery, but
you're saying for the services side of it?
Yeah, the services side.
Again, I think I would just say the same thing I said. I think there's so many aspects of our service. Like you look at one of our implementations, and they're not cookie cutter, but they're a large percentage of it is pretty much the same thing over and over again, and then there's some level of configuration on top of it. But a lot of times, especially with partners or different people that are doing implementations, they're starting at ground zero every time and going through the whole 100%. If we could have these large language models identifying best practices and the things that have worked the best for the previous 100 implementations, and be smart enough to say, hey, this implementation looks a lot like this one, this is what we're going to do. And you get to where that 50% or 60% or 70% of it is automated away and done with the system. Then the humans can focus on the hard part, or the more interesting and more creative part, which is how do we configure and take advantage of these best practices. And I just think, in that kind of a world, and just think about how much more efficient the implementation would be, how much quicker it would be, how much less expensive it would be for the customer, and more value that they would get because it would be a better implementation.
Yeah.
So I think, as I say, I just don't, I can't see a part of the business where in the long run, these large language models won't benefit. In the short run, I agree, it's hyped.
I mean, it almost seems like too that it's going to be like if you remember years ago, like there was Ruby on Rails and Python, like specific type of engineers. It's almost like there's going to be a new sec or a new title or new opportunity created in companies just for Chat GPT and creating these automation scripts or the AI, and maintaining that.
Yeah, because again, if you take what I've been saying and you apply it to engineering, take the mundane, repetitive pieces out of the job. Let the computer figure that part of it out. Let the computer write the code. Let engineers focus on, you know, how to how to have software that does better things or more things or more things that the customer wants, not focus on what is this line of code saying or how, I think it's going to require a different type of coder in the future,
Yeah.
right? And to me, I think that coder is probably going to enjoy their job more because it's going to be less about the ones and zeros and more about the functionality and the things that the product is going to do.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that is going to be a boon for engineers. And I think unless they, some of them obviously like that, the ones and zeros, but some of the more mundane part of it, I think will be automated away.
Yeah. And I mean, as we kind of the last question, you have CEO groups. How are they thinking about what ChatGPT, generative AI can do for sales, and how can it help you do your job? Because it's different when you talk about the day-to-day tasks, right? The doers of the company. From a CEO level, how do you think it's going to impact your job and how you think about running the business and what you can do now?
Well, I think CEOs right now are being squeezed, right? They're in a tough spot because their boards are asking them to be to acknowledge this market condition, and they want them to make money. They don't want them to be burning cash and losing money. They still want growth, so they want it all, and CEOs are challenged with how to walk that tightrope and balance those two things out. And so that's partly what the unicorn fallacy is written to help CEOs figure out. The other thing is, I think as part of that, everybody's evaluating all these SaaS platforms, right? Because there's 1,000 of them. There's more than 1,000 of them. There's a SaaS app for everything. There's all these siloed, singular apps. And I think a lot of the CEOs I talk to, we're going through with a fine tooth comb. Do we need this one? Do we need this one? Can we combine these ones? And where there are vendors that, are not siloed and can provide more than a single product, I think there's economies of scale there. And so we're seeing CEOs kind of go to less vendors and saving money that way. But I also think part of the noise level right now is trying to sift through the ones that add value and the ones that don't.
Yep.
Right. Everybody's telling you that they're going to change your business. The difficulty for the CEO is to figure out which ones really do change the business. And this is where I think, and I'm biased, but I think that if you look for companies or technologies that have these unique data sets that can be mirrored or married with, combined with the public ChatGPT-esque types of data sets. So you now have this private and public data set. And because of the new AI tools that you can layer on top of it to do a lot of things we're saying, basically a layperson can ask in normal English words, find me this piece of data, find me this trend, find me that, give me some, that's what's the game changer. And I think that's where, I think in our last one, we were talking about AI and forecasting, right? I mean, we didn't even talk about that today, but that's a big game changer because it's allowing the machines to look at a private data set that says, hey, rep, the last 10 deals you forecasted and the last 100 deals that your company closed look like this. And the deal that you're now saying is going to close doesn't match that pattern. And here's where it doesn't match. So go do these things. So it becomes almost like a sales training application. That's where the forecasting, tools are going. that's what CEOs, I think, that are paying attention
Well,
are trying to focus on.
and if you remember a few weeks ago, we had that offsite, the executive offsite, and we did the color analysis, the red, yellow, green, blue. I'm colorblind. I think I got those colors right. Right.
Yes.
And for those of you who know me,
that's what we told you they were.
Yeah, that's what you told me they were. Then you said I was very red, and I didn't really understand that, but I guess I get it now. And the blue being more data. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because if you think about, just the interaction with an executive team, everybody wants to, okay, I need to look at the data. I need to be able to understand every single piece. What happens with all those blue executives when they need to go in and now ChatGPT, you can say, hey, show me what's the trend in market analysis and what the prediction is for the future based on current economic, conditions. What happens to those blue mindsets, right? Because everything wants to go 10 layers deep, and let's look at this report, let's gather this data, let's talk to these people. Now you have this new technology coming in where data is going to be important, but how do you trust the AI from that standpoint, right? Because I don't think we haven't even talked about that as an executive team, but that's an interesting concept for me as well.
Well, I think it's going to change the way that everybody works. I mean, think about the Reds. The Reds are often, they're more aggressive. They're less focused on data. They're more sales, sales-like. No,
Yeah.
And I think that part of that is that a lot of the salespeople, and one of them, are less patient. They don't want to go do all the minutia to get the insights from the data. But imagine in this new world where all you have to do is
type a sentence,
ask a question. You might not even have to type it. You can just do an Ask Siri kind of thing to ChatGPT. I mean, all of a sudden, reds are going to become blues, and blues are going to become reds. I mean, I think it's going to change the whole thing.
I mean, it's an interesting concept, right? Because everybody wants to say, this person's yellow, this person has some green. And it's like, well, do you eliminate that blue? Because everybody then could be data.
Right.
It's very interesting.
People who are not data freaks because they're willing to be patient and go through all that are going to start seeing and reaping the benefits of data, and they're going to start loving it. And they might not even realize that they become addicted to the data.
Then the data, the blues will be like, hey, hold on, I think
they'll just double down.
I need to look at this data even more. I don't know anybody on our team that would do that.
No.
But no, I know we're coming up on time, and want to thank you once again for taking time out of your day. I think this is really helpful, and
always enjoy doing these.
And we have episode 7 coming up in a few months. We're targeting, I believe, a special guest will be more aligned to your book release as well. Stay tuned for that, because that's going to be really exciting. I'm going to tease it out once again. We have a very special guest that I'm getting the nod from my Vanna White over here that we are getting this person lined up. You won't want to miss that one. So as always, reach out, ask questions. If there's anything that we can do, feel free to add us on LinkedIn as well, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.